The gleaming halls of Starbase Medical Station 47, stretched before Drive Jace Harrison as he made his way to his first shift. After 6 years in Chicago's busiest trauma center, he thought he was prepared for anything. But nothing could have readied him for what awaited behind those sliding doors. "Dr. Harrison, welcome aboard." The voice that greeted him was melodious, with an otherworldly timbre that made his skin tingle. He turned to find himself face to face with the most striking being he'd ever encountered. Her skin was a deep indigo that seemed to shimmer under the station's lights, marked with intricate bioluminescent patterns that pulsed gently. Silver eyes with star-like points of light regarded him with keen intelligence. "I'm Dr. Naira Villara, Chief of Emergency Medicine," she said, extending a delicate 6-fingered hand. "I trust your journey from Earth was comfortable." Jace forced himself to maintain eye contact as he shook her hand, trying to ignore the pleasant warmth that spread from the contact. "Yes, thank you. Though I'm still adjusting to artificial gravity. You'll find your Earthside experience invaluable here," Naira said, leading him through the medical bay. "Though our patients are considerably more diverse." As if to emphasize her point, a creature that appeared to be made entirely of crystalline structures floated past on a hover gurney. The next few hours were a whirlwind of introductions and orientations. Jace met the rest of the medical team, a mix of humans and various alien species he struggled to keep straight. Dr. Crix, a being composed of what appeared to be living smoke contained within an environmental suit. Nurse Prell, whose exoskeleton clicked rhythmically as she moved between patients. And Dr. Naira, whose presence he found himself increasingly aware of as the day progressed. His first real test came during the afternoon shift. The emergency klaxon blared as a mining vessel reported multiple casualties from an accident. Jace found himself working alongside Naira, their movements synchronized as they treated injuries unlike anything in his medical texts. "Plasma burns to the thoracic cavity," Naira called out, her hands moving with practiced precision over a Centaurian miner's wounds. "Dr. Harrison, I need you to modulate the tissue regenerator to account for their triple helix DNA structure." Jace's fingers flew over the unfamiliar equipment, medical training warring with the sheer alienness of it all. But something clicked into place as he worked, a deeper understanding of medicine that transcended species barriers. Hours later, as the last patient was stabilized, Naira caught his eye. "Impressive adaptation, Dr. Harrison. Not many Earth physicians adjust so quickly to xenophysiology." "I had an excellent teacher," he replied, then felt heat rise to his cheeks as he realized how that sounded. The corners of Naira's mouth curved upward, and the bioluminescent patterns on her skin flickered in what he would later learn was amusement. "The night shift is about to start. Perhaps you'd join me for a meal in the station's observation lounge. I find watching the stars helps process a difficult shift." Jace knew he should decline. He was still finding his footing, professionally and literally, in this new environment. But there was something about Naira that drew him in, her brilliant mind, her quiet confidence, the way her silver eyes seemed to see right through him. "I'd like that," he heard himself say. As they made their way to the lounge, Jace couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into something far bigger than himself. He'd come to Starbase 47 looking for a new challenge in his medical career. Instead, he might have found something that would challenge everything he thought he knew about life, love, and the vast possibilities that waited among the stars. What he didn't know yet was that Dr. Naira Villara harbored secrets of her own, secrets that would soon throw both their lives into beautiful chaos. The observation lounge became their ritual over the next few weeks. After each shift, Jace and Naira would find themselves drawn there, discussing cases and watching distant stars paint trails of light across the void. Tonight, something was different. Naira's bioluminescent patterns seemed to pulse with unusual intensity, and her silver eyes held a strange gleam. "Have you ever encountered Rigelian fever before?" she asked, her fingers tracing patterns on the condensation of her glass. The movement was hypnotic, and Jace had to force himself to focus on her words. "Only in textbooks," he replied. It's supposed to be nearly extinct. We had a case today in Quarantine Bay 3. Naira's voice was tight. The patient showed unusual symptoms. I'd appreciate your perspective on the test results. They made their way to the medical lab, their shoulders brushing occasionally in the narrow corridors. Each contact sent a jolt through Jace that he tried desperately to ignore. Professional boundaries, he reminded himself. But those boundaries seemed increasingly fragile. The lab was deserted at this hour. Naira pulled up the patient's holographic scans, and Jace frowned at what he saw. The cellular degradation pattern was unlike anything he'd studied. This isn't standard Rigelian fever, he muttered, manipulating the image. The protein structures are all wrong. It's almost as if it's been engineered, Naira finished. Their eyes met across the glowing display. Someone is experimenting with modified pathogens, Jace. And I think I know why. Before she could elaborate, the lab door hissed open. Dr. Crix's smoky form billowed in, their environmental suits' lights pulsing urgently. Dr. Villara, we need you in emergency. Another case just came in. The next 12 hours were chaos. More patients arrived, all showing similar symptoms. Jace worked alongside Naira, watching with growing concern as she pushed herself to the limit. Her skin had taken on a feverish glow, and her movements, usually so graceful, seemed almost erratic. You need to rest, he insisted, catching her arm as she swayed slightly. I can't, she snapped, then softened at his expression. Jace, there's something you need to know. These cases, they're not random. They're targeting specific genetic markers. Markers that. She trailed off, her silver eyes clouding with what looked like pain. Naira? Alarm shot through him as she gripped the edge of a biobed, her knuckles turning a pale blue. I'm fine, she insisted, but her bioluminescent patterns were pulsing rapidly now. It's just, my cycle is approaching. I thought I had more time. Your cycle. My species undergoes a biological phase every 7 years. It's intense. Usually, I would return home, but with these cases. She straightened, visibly forcing control. I can handle it. But Jace had seen enough concerning symptoms to know better. Whatever was happening to Naira, whatever secrets she was keeping, they were reaching a breaking point. And as he watched her move determinedly to the next patient, he realized with startling clarity that his feelings for her had long since crossed the line from professional admiration to something far more complicated. A priority message flashed across the medical bay's screens, quarantine protocols initiated. Station-wide lockdown in effect. As the blast doors sealed with a heavy thud, Jace met Naira's silver gaze across the room. They were trapped here now, with a mysterious illness spreading, and an alien doctor fighting her own biological imperatives. And somewhere in the darkness of space, someone was orchestrating it all. The question was, why? And more importantly, how long could Naira maintain control before her cycle overwhelmed her completely? The answers would come sooner than any of them expected, and they would change everything. The quarantine lockdown stretched into its 3rd day. Jace watched helplessly as Naira's condition deteriorated alongside their growing patient count. Her normally indigo skin had taken on an almost metallic sheen, and the bioluminescent patterns now pulsed with an intensity that lit up entire rooms. The modified pathogen is targeting specific genetic sequences, she explained during a rare quiet moment, her voice strained. Sequences common in telepathic species. Like yours? Jace asked softly, noting how she gripped the edge of her desk, knuckles pale blue with effort. Yes. She met his eyes, and the silver in them seemed to swirl like liquid mercury. My people, the Velarans, are touch telepaths. During our biological cycle, our abilities become enhanced. Harder to control. A crash from the medical bay interrupted them. They rushed out to find Dr. Crix's environmental suit malfunctioning, wisps of their smoky form seeping through the seals. As they worked to stabilize the suit, Jace felt Naira's hand brush against his. A jolt of electricity shot through him, accompanied by a flash of foreign emotions, concern, fear, and something deeper, more primal. "I'm sorry," Naira gasped, snatching her hand away. During the cycle, skin contact can trigger unauthorized telepathic connections. "I should have warned you." But Jace found himself reaching for her hand again. "I trust you," he said simply. The look she gave him was complicated, full of longing and fear. "You shouldn't. Not now. The cycle is reaching its peak, and combined with whatever is in this pathogen." She shuddered. "It's affecting my control." Before he could respond, Nurse Prell's clicking footsteps approached rapidly. "Doctors, the latest test results are in. You need to see this." The holographic display showed something shocking. The pathogen wasn't just targeting telepathic genes, it was attempting to modify them. To enhance them. "Someone's trying to weaponize telepathic abilities," Naira breathed, her patterns flashing with agitation. "Using my people's biological cycle as a catalyst." "But why?" Jace wondered aloud. The answer came in the form of a station-wide transmission. A face appeared on all screens, a Velaran male with midnight blue skin and cold eyes. "Greetings, Station 47. I am Director Zill of the Purity Coalition. By now, you've noticed the effects of our little experiment. Consider it a demonstration. The age of secrets is ending. Through our enhanced telepathic abilities, we will create a society of perfect transparency." Naira's silver eyes widened in recognition. "My former mentor," she whispered. "He always believed our abilities were meant for more than healing." The transmission continued. "Dr. Velara, I know you're there. The pathogen was specifically calibrated to interact with your cycle. Join us. Help us usher in this new era." Suddenly, Naira doubled over, her patterns blazing like supernovas. The nearby medical equipment began to malfunction, screens flickering wildly. "Jace," she gasped, "my control. I can't." He caught her as she stumbled, ignoring the overwhelming rush of telepathic contact. Her mind crashed into his, fear, desire, and power all tangled together. Medical instruments began to float, surrounded by crackling energy. "Get away from me," she pleaded. "I could hurt you." Instead, Jace held her tighter. "We'll figure this out together," he promised, even as her telepathic energy surged around them, threatening to tear the medical bay apart. They had hours, maybe less, before Naira's enhanced abilities reached critical levels. Somewhere on the station, Director Zill was watching, waiting for her to break. And in Jace's arms, the woman he'd grown to care for fought a battle on two fronts, against a biological imperative millions of years in the making, and against those who would use it as a weapon. The real question was, which would break first, Naira's control, or the station itself? The medical bay had become a war zone. Equipment floated in the air, caught in the telekinetic storm of Naira's enhanced abilities. Her skin blazed like captured lightning, the bioluminescent patterns now so bright they cast shadows on the walls. Jace maintained his hold on her, even as the telepathic feedback threatened to overwhelm him. "Focus on my voice," he urged, ignoring the chaos around them. "You're stronger than this, stronger than what Zill wants you to become." Through their skin contact, he felt her desperate struggle for control. Images flashed through his mind, Naira as a young doctor, Zill teaching her to harness her abilities for healing, his growing obsession with improving their species. "He's wrong," she gasped, silver eyes meeting his. "This power, it's not meant for domination. It's meant for connection. For understanding." Nurse Prell's voice cut through the chaos. "Multiple critical patients crashing in quarantine. We need you both." The choice was immediate. Despite her condition, Naira pushed away from Jace, staggering toward quarantine. Medical training overcame everything else. He followed, watching in awe as she redirected her wild energy, using it to scan patients at a level deeper than any medical equipment could reach. The pathogen, she said, her voice echoing strangely, it's not just enhancing telepathic abilities. It's trying to force a mass consciousness. Zil wants to connect everyone's minds permanently. Without consent or control, Jace realized. It would be mental slavery. They worked frantically, Naira using her enhanced abilities to identify the pathogen's weak points while Jace synthesized countermeasures. Each touch between them now sparked visible energy, their growing connection somehow helping Naira maintain focus through her cycle's peak. Director Zil's voice came over the station's comm again. Impressive control, Naira. But futile. The pathogen has reached critical mass. Soon, everyone on this station will be connected. No more lies, no more secrets. Perfect transparency. Perfect tyranny, Naira countered, her patterns flashing with anger. You taught me that healing is about respecting boundaries, not breaking them. Suddenly, the quarantine bay doors slid open. Zil stood there, his midnight blue skin crackling with the same enhanced energy as Naira's. Then perhaps it's time for a new lesson. The air itself seemed to vibrate as two enhanced Velaran telepaths faced each other. Jace felt Naira's grip on his hand tighten. Your cycle makes you stronger, Zil said, stepping forward. Together, we could reshape consciousness itself. You've forgotten the most important thing about our abilities, Naira replied. Her free hand reached for a hypospray behind her back. They're meant to heal, not harm. She moved with shocking speed, enhanced reflexes letting her close the distance before Zil could react. The hypospray hissed against his neck, and his eyes widened in shock. What did you? A neural inhibitor, calibrated to our biology. Naira's voice was steady now, even as her own power crackled around her. Something I developed years ago, in case my control ever failed during a cycle. Zil collapsed, his enhanced abilities fading. But the victory was short-lived as alarms blared throughout the station. The pathogen, Jace called out, checking readings. His connection to it was the only thing keeping it stable. Without him. It's breaking down, Naira finished. And taking everyone infected with it. They had minutes, maybe less, to find a solution. And Naira, still in the grip of her biological cycle, was the only one with the enhanced abilities needed to synthesize a cure. But using that much power could push her past her breaking point. As their eyes met across the chaos of the medical bay, they both knew what had to be done. The question was, could their connection help Naira maintain control long enough to save everyone? Or would the attempt destroy her? The answer would change everything, if they lived long enough to discover it. Time seemed to slow in the medical bay as Naira stood in the center of the chaos, her indigo skin blazing with power. Medical equipment orbited her like satellites, responding to her enhanced abilities. Jace watched as she fought a battle on multiple fronts, against the deteriorating pathogen, against her own biological cycle, and for the lives of everyone on Station 47. I need your help, she said, her silver eyes meeting his. My abilities are strongest through touch. If we work together. Jace didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, taking both her hands in his. The telepathic connection slammed into him with the force of a supernova, Naira's brilliant mind, her determination, her feelings for him that she'd been trying to suppress. Focus, she whispered, though whether aloud or in his mind, he couldn't tell. Help me direct this. Together, they began to work. Through their connection, Jace provided an anchor, his medical knowledge combining with her enhanced abilities. They moved in perfect synchronization, synthesizing the cure molecule by molecule, using Naira's power to replicate and distribute it through the station's air filtration system. Around them, the infected patients began to stabilize. The pathogen, without Zil's influence to hold it together, broke down harmlessly in the face of their cure. But the effort was taking its toll on Naira. Her patterns pulsed erratically, and Jace could feel her consciousness flickering. "Stay with me," he urged, strengthening his grip on her hands. Through their connection, he pushed his own energy toward her, offering support, strength, and something more, something that had been growing between them since that first meeting. Naira's eyes widened as she felt it. "Jace, you. I love you," he said simply, both aloud and through their connection. "All of you. Your brilliance, your dedication, your power. You don't have to control everything all the time. Let me help carry this." Her patterns surged with light, but this time it wasn't chaotic. The energy between them stabilized, finding a harmonious balance. The last of the cure dispersed through the station, and finally, the crisis alarms fell silent. In the aftermath, they stood together in the observation lounge where it had all begun. Zil was in custody, his plan exposed. The station was returning to normal, though changed by what had happened. "My cycle will end soon," Naira said softly, watching the stars. Her patterns had settled into a gentle rhythm that Jace had learned to recognize as contentment. "But this connection we've formed, it's permanent." "Good," Jace replied, drawing her close. "Because I'm not letting go." She turned in his arms, silver eyes sparkling. "You know, there's still so much you don't know about Velaran biology. Our cycles may be intense, but they also mark the beginning of pair bonding. What we did today, sharing the power, stabilizing each other. Are you saying we're basically married by your species standards?" Jace asked, amused and intrigued. "More like, cosmically compatible," she said with a smile. "If you're interested in exploring that further." His answer was to kiss her, feeling the pleasant hum of their connection strengthening. Around them, the stars wheeled in their eternal dance, witnesses to a love that bridged species, space, and even consciousness itself. Later, as they returned to their medical duties, Jace realized that he'd gotten exactly what he'd come to Station 47 for, a challenge that pushed him beyond his limits, an opportunity to make a difference, and a love that defied astronomical odds. The station's lights dimmed into night cycle, but Naira's patterns lit their way forward, no longer a sign of lost control, but a beacon guiding them home to each other. In the end, it wasn't about controlling the power, it was about finding someone to share it with. Together, they'd written a new chapter in the endless story of humanity's journey to the stars. And their own story? It was just beginning.